Most people don't really live. They just wait to die slower than yesterday. You wake up, check your phone, drown in distractions, avoid discomfort, postpone decisions, fake smiles, suppress desires, and tell yourself, maybe tomorrow I'll start living. But tomorrow is a lie. Tomorrow is the fantasy of cowards who fear the fire of the present. You fear failure, judgment, loss. But the only thing worth fearing is reaching the end of your life and realizing you never truly lived. You avoided risk, and with it, greatness. You avoided pain, and with it, meaning. You avoided rejection, and with it, connection. Memento Mori. Remember that you will die, not someday, soon. Maybe without warning, maybe before you get the chance to fix what matters. But this is not meant to depress you. It's meant to free you. Death, properly understood, is not your enemy. It's your weapon, your wake-up call, your final excuse killer. So ask yourself right now, are you living like someone who knows they're going to die? Or like someone who thinks they're already dead? Remember, you will die. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius. Let that sentence linger. Don't rationalize it. Don't coat it in euphemisms. Don't spiritualize it. Just face it as it is. A raw, unchanging, irreversible fact. One day, your lungs will take their final breath. Your heart will surrender its rhythm and the world will continue without you. Your name, your habits, your routines, your small dramas, your grand ambitions, all of it will vanish like mist. And still, most people live as if this truth were optional, as if mortality were a theory to debate, not a sentence already written. We live inside a paradox. Death is the only guarantee we have, and yet we act like it's a distant rumor. We fear it, but we never look at it. We plan our years, our careers, our vacations, while completely ignoring the only question that matters. What if it ends tonight? The Stoics didn't contemplate death to be morbid. They meditated on it to be awake. In a world that constantly seduces us into sleepwalking, scrolling endlessly, chasing validation, numbing discomfort, Memento Mori is the slap to the face we all secretly need. It doesn't ask for your attention. It demands it. Remember, you will die, and therefore, you must live. But how can the thought of death, something so feared and avoided, lead to strength, clarity, even peace? Because death is the ultimate context, the backdrop against which all of life finds urgency, meaning, and depth. Without death, there is no reason to act, no reason to love fully, to risk boldly, to create passionately. Immortality, if it existed, would turn us into apathetic creatures, lazy with time, careless with purpose. But death does not allow that. It imposes finitude. And that limitation is not a prison. It is the birthplace of value. What is rare becomes sacred. What ends becomes precious. That's why we mourn the lost, not the permanent. That's why we treasure a sunset, a final kiss, a goodbye that might be the last. Death transforms the ordinary into the eternal, not by prolonging it, but by making it impossible to take for granted. And yet, despite this, we flee from the thought. We distract ourselves with endless busyness, noise, and goals. We convince ourselves we'll start living after the promotion, after the breakup, after the diploma, after the next milestone. But after is the favorite word of the dying man who always assumed there would be more time. There is no after. There is only now. Memento Mori isn't about waiting for death. It's about using its certainty to ignite the present. When you remember you will die, your excuses die too. Your fear of embarrassment, of starting too late, of disappointing others. All of it loses power in front of the scythe. Suddenly, truth matters more than image. Courage matters more than comfort. Living matters more than surviving. If you've been frozen in indecision, paralyzed by the fear of failure or loss or rejection, Memento Mori is not here to whisper. It's here to roar. Move. Now. Because you may not get the chance again. That is not dramatization. That is the contract you were born into. Life is not yours. It is rented. And death never forgets the due date. So how do we remember this truth in a world built to help us forget? Start small. Begin your mornings with it, not as dread, but as fuel. Instead of, what do I have to do today? Ask, what would matter today if this were my last? Write it on your mirror. Carry it in your pocket. Tattoo it into your choices. Let it guide your relationships, your words, your work. Make it your internal compass. Every time you're about to betray yourself to please someone, to delay your dream for convenience, or to shrink in fear of judgment, repeat it. I will die. This doesn't make life darker. It makes it brighter. When you strip away the illusion of permanence, what's left is radiant urgency, gratitude that's not performative, but visceral, presence that cuts through distraction, a quiet kind of joy that doesn't depend on outcomes, but on alignment with the now. You don't need to live forever. You just need to live now, as if you were aware of the end, because you are. And when the end comes, if you've truly lived by this, you will not beg for more time. You will simply nod and say, enough. I lived. I burned. I was awake. Fear wastes the life. You still have. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Fear is not your protector. It is your slowest death. It does not stab. It leaks you. Quietly, daily, invisibly. While you eat, while you scroll, while you overthink and stall and shrink. It whispers, not yet, not ready, not safe. And you obey, mistaking paralysis for patience and caution for wisdom. You tell yourself you're being smart, but what you're really doing is postponing your pulse. Look closely at fear, not the primal kind that saves you from cliffs and predators, but the psychological fear that clouds your choices. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of embarrassment, fear of living a life that no one applauds. This fear is a fraud, a master illusionist. It dresses up as reason, pretends to be thoughtful, but its goal is singular, to keep you from living fully while you still can. And the tragedy is, it works. You don't write the book. You don't confess the love. You don't leave the toxic job. You don't start the project. You don't risk the silence. All because fear convinces you to wait for a moment that doesn't exist, the perfect time, the guaranteed outcome, the applause in advance. But these never come. What comes is regret. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. Seneca diagnosed it clearly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The brain can rehearse failure so vividly you begin to experience it in advance, without ever taking the risk. You feel the shame, the rejection, the collapse. Not because they've happened, but because fear knows how to simulate catastrophe. And in that simulation, you abort the action. But what if fear is not proof of danger, but proof of importance? What if it's not an alarm to retreat, but a signal to proceed? Precisely because it means something is at stake? To live without fear is not the goal. That would make you a psychopath or a god. The Stoics never preached fearlessness. What they practiced was clarity. They asked, is this fear rational? Is it useful? Is it aligned with virtue? If not, discard it. Not later. Now, this is the discipline modern minds lack. We pamper our fear, feed it with avoidance, reinforce it with excuses. We wrap it in language. I'm just being careful, or I'm waiting for the right time. But fear is not patient. It is parasitic. The longer you wait, the stronger it grows. It attaches itself to more things. Soon, you're not just afraid of failure. You're afraid of change, of silence, of being seen, of being misunderstood, of standing alone. And so you shrink. But here is the Stoic slap. Every moment you obey fear, you betray life. What you could have written, you didn't. What you could have loved, you lost. What you could have become, you postponed into a future that might not arrive. Fear is not innocent. It is an active thief of life, and most people won't even notice until the final chapter. Then suddenly they wake up in the hospital bed, the retirement home, the aging body, and realize they didn't live. They hesitated. Memento Mori tells you death is coming. This point tells you fear is a form of slow-motion suicide. It doesn't kill the body, it kills the moments, the kisses you didn't give, the truths you didn't tell, the boundaries you didn't draw, the talents you buried, the fire you never lit. So how do you kill the fear before it kills your life? First, expose it. Name it. Write it down. When fear remains vague, it feels omnipotent. But once articulated, it starts to shrink. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? What's more dangerous, acting and failing, or never acting at all? Second, test it. Take action before permission. You do not need to feel ready. You need to move. Once you act, however small the step, you reclaim authorship of your life. Fear cannot thrive in motion. It only grows in delay. Third, reframe it. The Stoics didn't ask for easy lives. They asked for strong spirits. They saw every fear as a training ground for courage. They walked into discomfort deliberately, fasting, sleeping on the floor, enduring insults, not because they were masochists, but because they knew. The body that touches fire regularly learns not to flinch, and finally, anchor to meaning. Fear cannot compete with purpose. If your life is rooted in ego, reputation, likes, approval, then fear will always win because you've given your power to others. But if your life is rooted in virtue, courage, truth, contribution, then fear becomes noise. You may still feel it, but it will not decide for you. Your time is shrinking. Every hour lost to fear is unrecoverable. You will not get a replay. And no one, not your parents, not your friends, not your therapist, can live it for you. You must confront the beast alone. And when you do, you'll find this quiet truth. Fear doesn't disappear. It just stops being the boss. You'll still tremble, but you'll move. You'll still doubt, but you'll speak. You'll still ache, but you'll burn forward. And when death finally arrives, as it will, you will not beg for a second chance, because you will have lived, even if afraid. And that, in the Stoic world, is the only form of bravery that counts. Pain is inevitable. Regret is optional. If you wish to be a Stoic, prepare to be broken. Epictetus. Pain is not the enemy. It's the entrance exam, the cost of presence, the rite of passage into anything worth remembering. Every meaningful act in your life, loving, building, changing, standing for something, will demand pain as part of its price. That pain can't be outsourced. It can't be negotiated away. And the more you resist it, the more it transforms into something worse. Regret. Modern minds have confused comfort with safety. We've become allergic to anything that feels like discomfort. We want growth without tension, love without heartbreak, discipline without resistance. But the truth is ancient. If you reject pain, you also reject depth. The Stoics understood this not as a metaphor, but as a law. Pain will visit you. You don't get to choose that. What you choose is whether that pain will be the pain of doing or the pain of avoiding, whether it will be the sting of discipline or the rot of delay, whether it will forge you into a weapon or paralyze you into a ghost. You can endure the pain of a hard conversation today, or the pain of an unspoken resentment that destroys everything in 5 years. You can bear the pain of saying no to distractions, or the pain of looking back on a life scattered across empty pleasures. You can face the pain of failure in motion, or the pain of becoming someone who never even tried. This is the deal. Pain is inevitable. Regret is not. Regret is what happens when you choose escape over action. When you let fear write your script. When you protect your ego by sacrificing your becoming. Unlike pain, regret has no use. It teaches nothing. It only corrodes. Pain purifies. Regret poisons. Marcus Aurelius did not run from suffering. He sat inside it. The plague, betrayal, war, death of children. These were not abstract to him. They were his life. And still, he wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle is not an interruption. It is the raw material of the path. Pain is not a glitch in the matrix. It is the matrix. The core substance from which meaning, growth, and greatness are carved. So what are you doing with your pain? Most people dull it, escape it, wrap it in alcohol, performance, scrolling, sex, lies. Anything to avoid feeling it fully. But the Stoic does not run. The Stoic steps into it, not because they enjoy it, but because they know what lives on the other side. A kind of freedom that cannot be faked. A kind of character that cannot be bought. You think you are avoiding pain by staying comfortable? You are not. You are trading pain. Immediate pain for chronic pain. Surface pain for soul pain. You are choosing to suffer later in silence. For longer. For nothing. Regret is more terrifying than pain because regret cannot be undone. You can recover from wounds. You can't recover from time you never lived. This isn't about chasing suffering. The Stoic doesn't romanticize pain. They use it as a forge, a compass, a test. If it hurts, it signals one of two things. Something matters or something must change. Both are sacred signs. Pain, rightly interpreted, is a call to movement, to depth, to clarity. The next time it appears, not just physical pain, but emotional, existential, relational pain, pause. Do not numb it. Do not panic. Ask instead, what is this pain trying to teach me? What am I afraid to feel? What have I postponed that now demands a price? Because if you listen to pain early, it guides. If you ignore it, it haunts. Even joy is shaped by pain. You cannot love someone deeply without accepting the risk of loss. You cannot create something beautiful without wrestling with doubt, fatigue, and critique. You cannot become brave without walking through the fire of fear. Pain is not a wall, it's a gate. Not an end, but the beginning of everything real. The Stoics trained for this. They didn't pray for easier lives. They prayed for stronger minds. They practiced voluntary discomfort, fasting, cold rejection, solitude, not to suffer pointlessly, but to learn how to suffer strategically, to become resilient, to turn adversity into inner peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace that comes from nothing left to fear. You want to be stronger? Sit with the pain. Let it carve you. Let it break what must be broken and harden what must remain. You will come out smaller in ego but larger in presence. The fear of discomfort is where mediocrity is born. But the acceptance of discomfort is where mastery is built. There will be pain either way. The only question is whether yours will be the pain of becoming or the pain of withering. Because one thing is certain, you will not escape unscarred. But you can choose which scars you carry. Let them be the scars of someone who dared. Someone who burned through fear. Someone who faced what others fled. Someone who bled for meaning and walked anyway. You're not promised tomorrow. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Marcus Aurelius. You are not guaranteed another day. You know this. You've heard it before. But knowing a truth intellectually and feeling it in your bones are two different realities. Most people live like they're on a long lease, as if life were a streaming service that will still be there when they're ready to watch. But life doesn't pause. It doesn't wait for your doubts to settle or your confidence to rise. And it does not negotiate extensions. You're not promised tomorrow, which means everything you postpone, the apology, the leap, the truth, the risk, may never return. There are no guarantees that the people you love will be here next week. No guarantees that your health will hold, that the opportunity will still be available, that time will unfold the way you imagine. You think you have years, but all you really have is now. And now is shrinking. We live in denial. Denial isn't just emotional, it's structural. Everything around you is built to reinforce the illusion of permanence. Deadlines are months away. Birthdays repeat. Calendars stretch into next year. You pay your rent. You schedule a meeting. You reply someday to the deepest desires of your heart. You live like there will always be a later. But the Stoic knows there may not be. Marcus Aurelius meditated on death daily, not to become cynical, but to become urgent. Not frantic, not anxious, but fully awake. Memento Mori wasn't a phrase he engraved for aesthetic. It was a mental weapon against inertia. He used the reminder of death to sharpen his action, his speech, his choices. When he said, "Let that determine what you do and say and think," he was inviting you into a radical clarity. So let's ask honestly, if you truly internalized that tomorrow might never arrive, what would you stop doing? What would you finally start? Who would you forgive? What truth would you finally speak? Not out of drama, but because it no longer makes sense to pretend. Because here's the thing. When you remember that tomorrow isn't promised, everything unnecessary begins to die. Petty grudges, performative ambition, fake friendships, delayed dreams. You no longer have the luxury to be fake. You no longer worship perfection because perfection is slow. You no longer serve ego because ego is fragile and slow to change. Death exposes what matters by threatening to take it. So we must ask, if death came for you tonight, would you be proud of how you spent your last 24 hours? Not perfect, not flashy, but honest. Did you speak with intention? Did you love with courage? Did you use your time in alignment with your values, or in appeasement to your fears? The tragedy is not that people die. The tragedy is that most people never truly live before they do. They drift through the years like background actors in their own lives. They obey their calendar. They perform for others. They postpone meaning for some imagined future where conditions will be perfect. That future never comes. It evaporates into a past they don't want to remember. You're not promised tomorrow, so the only sane way to live is to act as if today counts. That's not a motivational slogan, it's a strategic framework. If today were all you had, your priorities would change. Your conversations would deepen. Your tolerance for bullshit would evaporate. Your focus would sharpen, and your choices would align with who you claim to be. That's the Stoic path. Not reckless speed, not impulsive chaos, but measured urgency. The urgency of someone who understands time is a luxury, not a right. The urgency of someone who realizes their energy, attention, and breath are non-renewable. The truth is, most people die long before their hearts stop beating. They die the day they stop taking risks, the day they stop telling the truth, the day they choose routine over growth, image over authenticity, numbness over clarity. Their pulse may continue, but their life has already been archived. You must resist this sleepwalk. You must shake yourself awake. Every morning is not just a gift, it is an assignment. You are here to do something with this breath, not tomorrow. Now write it, say it, build it, leave it, forgive it, finish it, begin it. If you do not, someone else will, or no one will, and your life will become a quiet file in the archive of what could have been. There is no later for what matters. There is only now, and now is shrinking. The Stoics weren't in love with death. They were in love with life, which is why they stared death in the face every day, to remind themselves not to waste the miracle of motion, the miracle of thought, the miracle of choice. You don't need more time. You need fewer lies about how much of it you have. So the next time you delay something that matters, whisper this into your own mind. I'm not promised tomorrow. And then act like someone who understands what that truly means. Let death sharpen your purpose. Don't stumble through life as if you were destined to live forever. What's left unsaid, undone, unfelt, it matters. Marcus Aurelius. Purpose is not found. It is forged. In urgency, in discomfort, in the intimate awareness that your time is burning. Death is not just the end of life. It is the whetstone of meaning. And if you ignore it, you will drift into a fog of busyness, productivity, ambition, all dressed up as purpose, but hollow as dust. Death is not here to paralyze you. It is here to cut away the noise, to remove the unnecessary, to focus your fire on what actually deserves to burn. The modern world floods you with options, infinite causes to fight for, paths to follow, goals to chase, identities to perform. You scroll, compare, consume, distract, mistaking movement for meaning. But abundance without direction leads to confusion, not clarity. Without death in view, you waste your energy trying to be everything and end up being nothing of consequence. Death is the blade that carves away all that is not essential. It does not flatter your ego. It exposes your cowardice. It doesn't ask what makes you look good. It asks what makes you matter. When you truly contemplate your death, vanity becomes offensive and distraction becomes betrayal. Every wasted hour feels like a crime scene. So ask yourself, what do you refuse to die without doing? What conversation must be had? What vision haunts you at night, not because it's romantic, but because it feels unavoidable? You don't need more motivation. You need confrontation with your own finitude. Because when death is real to you, purpose is no longer optional. It becomes oxygen. The Stoics didn't preach vague ideas of life meaning. They asked one brutal question. What role were you meant to play in the great theater of existence? And are you playing it fully or sleepwalking through your scene? Epictetus taught that each person has a function, a role aligned with reason and virtue. Not something imposed by society, but something revealed when all artificial expectations are stripped away. And nothing strips the illusion faster than the realization that you don't have forever to figure it out. Purpose in Stoicism is not found in comfort. It is found in alignment between thought, speech, and action, between your inner values and your outer conduct. It is not about applause. It is about integrity. And death, looming silently, purifies this integrity like fire purifies gold. Let death sharpen your purpose. Let it cut away the false urgency of other people's expectations. Let it silence the voices that tell you to wait, to be realistic, to keep it safe. Those voices do not answer for your life. You do. When you live with this awareness, you stop asking shallow questions like, what's in it for me? Will they like it? Is this impressive? And you begin asking sacred ones, is this real? Is this aligned? Would I be proud of this if today were my last? When death is your mirror, you dress your life in honesty. Most people only find purpose when they're told they're dying. Suddenly, the job doesn't matter. The money, the pride, the grudges, all dissolve. They call who they love. They create what they had buried. They forgive. They become who they were meant to be, just as the curtain falls. But you don't have to wait for a diagnosis to live like that. You can live now, as someone who has nothing to prove but everything to give. Someone who chooses work that makes them burn, words that carry weight, presence that cannot be faked. A path that doesn't guarantee applause, but guarantees peace at the edge of death. Let death make your standards merciless. Let it make your time sacred. Let it banish cowardice from your speech and pettiness from your choices. Let it turn every day into a rehearsal for your final performance, not in the eyes of the crowd, but in the silence of your conscience. Purpose is not a luxury for those who have time to spare. It is a requirement for anyone who remembers they do not. So whatever you've postponed, begin it. Whatever you've avoided, face it. Whatever you love, protect it, deepen it, live it. You're not here to pass time. You're here to spend it wisely, fiercely, and without apology, because death will come. And when it does, the only thing that will matter is whether you lived with a fire that was yours, or whether you died having followed a script that never deserved your name. You've been warned gently before, not this time. This is not a metaphor, not poetry, not a spiritual symbol. You are going to die. Your body is already aging, your minutes already spent, your presence already slipping into memory for those around you, even as you read this. The question is not whether the end will come. The question is whether it will find you alive or just breathing. You were given life, not to hoard it behind hesitation, but to wield it. With urgency, with clarity, with dignity. You must remember, candle, you will die. Fear is stealing your life before death arrives. Pain is part of becoming. Regret is not. You're not promised another breath, and death itself is your truest compass, if you have the courage to let it guide you. This is not a call to panic. It's a call to wake up, to stop waiting for better timing, external permission, or some magical alignment of circumstances. That day may never come, but this one did, and that's enough. The Stoics didn't teach us to fear death. They taught us to dominate life through awareness of it, to live with precision, to speak with weight, to cut through the fog of false priorities like a blade through silk. They understood the most powerful life is not the one that lasts the longest. It's the one that burns the most authentically. So ask yourself, now, not later, am I living today in a way I would admire if this were the end? Would I be proud of what I just did with my last 24 hours? Have I spoken what matters, done what matters, been who I claim to be? If the answer is no, then change now. Because nothing will change for you unless you do. And death, as always, is watching. Not to mock you, not to scare you, but to remind you. Your time is a currency you cannot refund. So spend it with courage, with stillness, with precision, and above all, spend it awake. Memento Mori. Let it be not your fear, but your fire.